Welcome to another episode of Trash Talk. I'm Jon-Bernard. This is Nick. We're the Kairouz Brothers giving you the news of combat sports this week. We're bringing you everything. Look, it's been a bit of a slow week because we're waiting for the Sphere. Not much news has come out, a few announcements. Nick, where are we at in terms of combat sports?
Look, I understand we are considered media members now.
Yeah, we're in the
media. But we are still fans. And as a fan this week, absolutely nothing has happened. I feel like I'm refreshing my Twitter feed. I'm looking at MMA Junkies page. I'm looking at all these news sites. And it's nothing. There's nothing happening. But there is enough to talk about because the Sphere is coming up.
Yeah.
They're going head-to-head with Canelo Alvarez.
We've got Gilbert Burns this week as well.
Gilbert Burns, UFC Vegas fight night. So there is still a bit happening, so we can get into it. But in terms of like compared to other weeks, it's been pretty slow.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not a knock on the fight weeks. Nothing happening in boxing, really. I mean, you got Canelo coming up, but really boxing, they can't create any excitement like the UFC
No,
can.
like if you had to do a topic on boxing right now, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. I know.
You got AJ and Dubois.
That's what I'm saying. That's a big fight coming up in Wembley, but that's not for another, 3 weeks? And even then, like, the media for that, it's a bit slower than what it should be. Like, I don't know. I feel like people just aren't characters enough where they're making news headlines constantly, which I understand maybe that's separated. That's what, like, McGregor's for. But I just would like a bit more headlines.
Well, that's why you might need a Ryan Garcia in your sport.
Exactly.
Bring him back.
Man, him singing and doing TikTok dances, it made the fight all the more special.
Free Garcia. But let's get into our MMA Hot Take of the week. Make sure you're commenting your hot takes on social media at Jon-Bernard K on Instagram. This week's MMA Hot Take, Dana White is right for glazing Jon Jones because he is the GOAT in the UFC.
I will acknowledge Jon Jones is the GOAT, the greatest fighter of all time.
Yep.
But to be glazing him this much, Dana White, it's a bit much.
I'm all for the glazing.
I'm not for the glazing because if you look at Dana White pre-2021, or even pre-2020 maybe, he was the biggest Jon Jones hater. There's some of the comments he made in post-fight press conferences.
Says he wouldn't fight Francis Ngannou. He would change to another division.
Like, it's not someone that you put him up against the Dana White of today, the glazing Dana White.
Yeah.
Two completely different people. It's very surprising. It's very disturbing to see.
Now, I think Dana knows what he's doing. Okay, he's seen that there's this big craze online that Dana White has been glazing Jon Jones, and I think he's kind of doing it intentionally now. Whether he's he's getting a card at one of these, festivals and he's packing Jon Jones, whether he's at a press conference at the Dana White Contenders series talking about Jon Jones. At the end of the day, Dana White is a promoter. He's promoting his fighter, okay? And if you have to sell someone in the heavyweight division as the greatest of all time, and you have to continue to do it to solidify it, he's doing his job. Okay. And that's why the UFC is so successful. So Dana, keep sucking him off because I'm enjoying it. And you know what? Everyone's talking about Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones and Stipe. And that's a result of Dana White. Okay. So he's doing his job. Dana keeps sucking him off.
I'll commend Dana White for selling the potential fight and being like the villain on the side of Jon Jones. But if I'm being objective and I'm looking at the inconsistencies of Dana White, just on a very fact of activity, Dana White has called out fighters for inactivity previously.
There was that video with Ariel Helwani. I did say that.
Now all of a sudden, Dana White doesn't give a shit about inactivity. Yeah. Jon Jones can do whatever he wants because he's the greatest of all time. He's the pound for pound because he went up to another division. So many fighters have done that before. And activity and, media members' opinions, they do matter. They do. So the pound for pound rankings, there's obviously some weight to it because people actually give attention to it. So if Dana White's just flogging it off saying, oh, you're all stupid, I think it's in character, I understand, but if it's not, then it's a problem.
There might be an argument saying Dana's taken it too far. You don't have to bring it up when someone's asking about the weather, whether Jon Jones is the GOAT or not. But at the end of the day, he's the boss. He needs to promote his product, promote him as the GOAT. And to these media members in the crowd, I know we're supposed to be media members, but to argue with the CEO of the company, I know. And be like, oh, you're doing this too much. How come you didn't say this? It's like, shut up and ask the man some serious questions. And you're not there to argue with him. Like, would you argue and yell at Vince McMahon?
No.
Maybe now.
I probably wouldn't converse with him at all right now.
Okay. But like, would you argue with your boss at your company?
Depends on the company.
No, and it's the media's job to hold him accountable. But on a subject like whether you're glazing Jon Jones too much, know your role. That's what I'm saying to these media members. Know your role and respect Dana White for what he's done to the UFC. He's got it at a level above boxing, all these other combat sports, because of glazing Jon Jones, because of tactics like that. So keep it up.
And I look at it through the lens of Dana White. The more fights that Jon Jones has, the more money the UFC makes. So realistically, Jon Jones might fight Stipe, then retire. Dana White's trying to remain in his good books, win over some goodwill and say, John, look, I've been glazing you this whole time. Can you give me one more fight? Give me one more fight. Come on, fight Tom Aspinall.
Yeah.
Fight this person, please. Fight Alex Pereira, whoever it is. I just want to work on the goodwill.
I think we've been using the term glazing too much, so let's just move on to the next topic. I don't like using that terminology too much. But Dana White did announce some fight news that was coming. He went on his live stream.
A lot of fight news.
He loves delivering news on his live stream. He loves getting on Instagram, interacting with the live viewers and the comments. Some have caught him out very recently, a few times with getting him to say things he doesn't want to say. But he's announced some fight news on his Instagram live. He's come out and said he's got Conor McGregor news, Alexander Volkanovski news, Max Holloway news, Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira, and was there anyone else?
I think that was all of them. But he basically named half of the stars on the roster. Whether he actually delivers on this news, though, I don't know, because he sometimes has said, "I've got massive news," and then delivers absolutely nothing.
Well,
he'll make an announcement about, oh, this guy's doing a promo here in Vegas. Like, it's not real fight news. Dana White, sometimes I question the authenticity of his actual announcements.
Well, regardless, he said he's got big fight news coming for these fighters. So I want to ask you, let's guess the fight news from Dana White, starting with Conor McGregor. He said he spoke to Conor. Is it going to be a Chandler fight? Who's Conor fighting next?
I think it only makes sense at this point to fight Michael Chandler. If Conor McGregor doesn't fight Michael Chandler, then that's just a big drop of the ball from both Conor McGregor and the UFC. If it's going to be in December, though, I think that's the bigger question. Dana White's adamant that it's not going to be a fight this year. And Chael Sonnen actually did come out and said he's got great mail, that it's going to be January, Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor in California.
Yeah, Chael Sonnen pretty much came out and said that the UFC wanted in January, Conor McGregor wants it in December. And they're just a back and forth on that. So if it's Conor McGregor, I'm saying it is Michael Chandler. That's pretty much it. But for Michael Chandler, who's been putting out things on Twitter like, you got to be ready to go, and we move on to the next, and he's willing to fight another active fighter and wants to finally go because he's been unemployed for the last 3 years, I'm saying it's going to be Conor or someone like a Dustin Poirier rematch, or someone, that shows that he can still be active in the UFC. So I think it's a matchup for there. Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler. It's going to go in December.
Chael Sonnen parading about this inside scoop that he's got. Who is it? He's not good friends with Conor McGregor.
Could be Daniel Cormier.
I've seen the stuff he said about him. I don't think he's going to get his information from Dana White. He keeps his cards close to his chest. So where's he getting this inside scoop? I don't know. Charles says some outlandish things. Maybe this is just part of that news.
Charles Oliveira, who's he fighting next?
Charles Oliveira only makes sense to fight Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker at least moved up to the top 5. If he wants a future title shot, he needs to fight someone inside the top 5. And Charles Oliveira, he's pretty much fought everybody in the top 5 right now outside of Dan Hooker. So if he has to fight Dan Hooker, it's the only fight that makes sense.
A title eliminator with Dan Hooker would be great for that division. Dan Hooker's earned it with that win that he just got in Perth. But if it's not Dan Hooker, I think it's against Arman Sarukian for an interim title, and that could be the news that he wants to announce.
Well, last week we were going on about that, who could actually fight Arman if Islam is ruled out. And for me, it was Charles is the only person that makes sense because Justin Gaethje, I'm pretty sure he's concussed from the last KO that he copped.
Yeah.
Dustin Poirier, he was already an interim title holder, lost the title fight already. He doesn't make sense. So really, Charles Oliveira, if he doesn't fight Dan Hooker, aka interim title fight, I'm happy for him to have it.
Alexander Volkanovski. Now, for him, I think he needs a featherweight tune-up fight. I don't think he's going to go straight for the title. I think it should be someone like Josh Emmett to be like, listen, can you still go in the featherweight division? Give him that layup fight. And, he very well could get knocked out in that fight. It's a risk fight for Volk too. But being the former featherweight champion and a long reigning one, I think he walks through Josh Emmett and then goes on to the title.
I'll let you go there, but I don't want to take a shit on your take. But him fighting Josh Emmett is the most high-risk, low-reward situation for Volkanovski. Firstly, Emmett's got great punching power. You saw him give a seizure to that guy in Vegas last year.
Yeah, Bryce Mitchell.
And Volkanovski, coming off 2 back-to-back knockouts, doesn't want to fight a great striker like that. Or not a great striker, but a significant striker.
Yeah.
For Volkanovski, I think the announcement's going to be that he's just going to face the winner of Topuria Holloway. It's the only fight for Volkanovski that makes sense. He's come out the last few months and said, my next fight's going to be a title fight. I don't know why that would change. Unless somehow people have teased like he's going to verse Poirier, he's going to verse Charles Oliveira. But those fights don't make sense either, because why would you go up in weight and fight someone when you're not going to stay in that division and you're going to go back down?
Yeah, no, I think the UFC want to stick with their divisions, whether he's going to be featherweight or go up. He doesn't want to go up anymore. There's been too many people jumping up and down, so I think they want a featherweight fight for him. If it's not going to be Josh Emmett, it's going to be Movsar Evloev, because this guy is probably the number 1 contender in the featherweight division. Yeah, I know it's high risk for Volk, because if he loses this fight, that's pretty much career for you
That's what I'm
done
saying.
in the featherweight division. So why would you not take a title fight?
If you're Volkanovski, why would you take a high-risk fight? You don't need to because you're kind of already guaranteed a title shot.
And look, it's another Dagestani. We've seen Volk's record with Dagestanis, with Islam.
He's one and one.
I'm not saying he's Islam Makhachev, but at the end of the day, I think that's a scary fight for him. So you're right. It's either a title fight or a chin-up fight. And that's my opinion.
But the only thing with the announcement to be the number one contender, I don't think they've ever done that previously. So it'd just be a weird zone for Volk to be in, we've got massive fight news for Volk. Yeah. He's the number one contender.
Well, let's talk about that. He also teased Max Holloway news. What could be the news for Max Holloway? The guy's fighting for a title against Ilya Topuria. So what's the news? Could he be defending the BMF title? Or could it be announced that he'll be fighting Volk down the line if he wins the title?
Nah, that can't be Volk again.
Someone that's called Max Holloway out as well in tweets, Conor McGregor. Could it be a Max Conor McGregor? I don't know. What makes most sense is, I think you're right, winner of Topuria versus Holloway versus Volkanovski.
Max Holloway, the news could be maybe that it's going to be a dual title fight. Maybe the BMF will be on the line.
They could be saying they're going to put the BMF title on the line.
That could be maybe an announcement for Holloway.
It is very weird to announce a title fight. It's very weird to announce fight news for Holloway while he's fighting for a title against Ilya Topuria.
Unless they're going to say he's pulling out. Is that the news? They got early mail that Max Holloway's pulling out.
It's before he's even fought Topuria. It doesn't really make sense.
So he's put out all this rumored fight news, and a lot of these fighters have gone along with it. If you see their tweets, they're all saying, the
big news coming.
Charles Oliveira, the lion of the welterweight division is coming back. So I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Max Holloway, if he's going to versus Conor McGregor again, I don't think he wants that because he already lost to him. So we'll see.
Last person that was teased on Dana White's Instagram Live, Dustin Poirier. Now, Dustin Poirier's had his hands full this week because his Twitter got hacked. And
one of them was real. One of his Instagram stories was real.
I bought into the scam. I bought into his, I think it was on the Tron network. It was a cryptocurrency. You owe me money, Dustin Poirier. But he's got fight news coming. He said fight news is coming. Uno mas, which means he wants one more fight. This could be his retirement fight. What is the fight going to be for Dustin Poirier?
Hopefully not Volkanovski. That's my first point. I don't want it to be Volk.
Well, look, the heavily rumored fight that's on the internet right now is Dustin Poirier versus Colby Covington.
Yeah, but that's been rumored for so long.
But tell me it doesn't make sense. These guys have animosity between each other. They both need wins. Not that Dustin needs a win because he wants to retire, but Colby needs a win, and he's talked the most amount of trash probably outside of Conor McGregor about Dustin.
The only problem with that fight is we've asked Dustin about this in person as well. Dustin Poirier, every time Colby Covington is mentioned, he says he wants to fight him in the streets. He doesn't want to give him...
Doesn't want to give him money.
Doesn't want to give him money by giving him the opportunity to fight in the octagon. He says it's that much animosity between the two of them that he would fight him on site in the street. So I think Dustin Poirier is a man of his words. So I don't think he's going to be the person to be like all of a sudden, you know what? I hate him, but I'll fight him in the octagon. We'll have the press conference. We'll talk shit to each other. That's not going to happen. He's made that known that that's not going to happen.
One thing this could be with announcing all these fighters at once, it doesn't seem like they're all connected, but they all very well could be connected with the UFC having that rumored 165-pound division.
I don't know.
Because this could be the start of it, the start of a new belt. When you're talking about fighters like Dustin, Conor, you very well could have a title contender fight for Dustin Poirier at this 165-pound division.
I don't think you know who Dana White is. While Dana White is living and breathing, there will be no 165-pound division. He's made that known many times. That's not a division that he wants to make. And I feel like even in the UFC nowadays, he's talking about cutting back on divisions. He's not, talking about adding divisions. He likes it the way it is, and I don't see them adding it anytime soon. I understand.
But fighters have been contacted by the UFC in the past where they'd be interested in fighting at a 165-pound division. You're talking about between lightweight and welterweight. I think it's a possibility to happen.
Light welterweight? Is that what's the division going to be called? Light
welterweight?
No,
I don't know.
Lighter weight?
Catch weight? What could it be?
Welterweight?
But it would make sense for someone like a Chandler versus Conor McGregor to fight for a new title, for example. I think it's something that the UFC could do, and it could clear out the old guard of the UFC in the lightweight divisions, in those welterweight divisions, and flourish some new talent in those divisions, and then you have this stacked 165-pound division. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, but if you put in the 165 division, you're taking talent away from 170 and 155. So there's no real point to it. I'm not a fan of it because I feel like with any sport, when you add teams or when you add divisions, the talent pool, yes, it becomes larger, but it becomes less quality.
Well, when you have
There's
someone,
more quantity and less quality.
for example, if you have a Dustin versus Colby at 165, and then you have a Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler at 165, what division is this stacked and that entertaining? Could be the most entertaining division in the UFC.
Yeah, but you're taking it from other divisions. They could easily fight at other divisions. I think they're going to fight at 170, so who cares? You've seen how much fighters now are just fluctuating weights. They're jumping up to different weight classes, going for double titles. If you put in this now, people are going to go for 3 titles. They're going to be a 3-division champion, and it's going to have less meaning.
Well, if the UFC were to put in a 165-pound division, I think they'd be strict on divisions. You're committed to a division
you can't be
for a long period of time, unless you're like a Yuri Prohaska, you take a couple of losses and you think about going down or up.
You can't change people's weights. It's just like, the way that, you can't change the weight that they're going to fight at. That's their choice still.
At the end of the day, there's no stakes for some of these fighters in their divisions right now. Like someone like Colby Covington, probably not going to get a title shot because he lost his chance.
That's his fault, though.
So
you find
a new division. Either you go up, some people don't want to go up to lightweight because you're going to face Islam Makhachev or it's too much of a jump. 165-pound makes sense. And with Dana announcing all these fighters to have announcements coming up, an 165-pound division could be it for the UFC.
I'd put my house on the fact that that's not happening.
I don't know.
There's no chance. There's no chance because...
If it does happen, Trash Talk said it here first. This is Dana White's announcement. I'd like to see it happen.
Not happening.
Okay, well, I want to try something new. Okay, we haven't really done this on Trash Talk, but I want to see if these are contenders or pretenders. We're going to start this week with the welterweight division. We're going to go through the rankings and see whether or not these fighters are contenders or pretenders in their division.
Okay.
You got Belal Muhammad right now as the champion. Okay,
definitely a contender.
Well, some would say no.
Yeah.
Okay, no. Let me just get to it. Okay. So contenders or pretenders in the welterweight division right now, starting with number 1 ranked Leon Edwards.
After the last fight, pretender.
I agree.
I maintain, he was very lucky to beat Usman the first time. He is a quality striker and did have some good wrestling in those showings against Usman. But the fight against Colby Covington, that wasn't a great showing. If anything, you're an idiot for not knocking him out. And then you talk pre-fight as well.
The fight against Belal, he got absolutely mauled. So I think he has a long time off.
He lost that.
It's back to the drawing board for Leon Edwards, and until he can prove that he can be championship caliber, I think he's a pretender as well.
Losing to Belal 4-1 or 5-0 means you're a pretender.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, number 2, Kamaru Usman. Now, for me, Kamaru Usman is a contender. Serious contender in the division. You saw what he's been able to do in that division. I think he's the greatest of all time in the welterweight division. Okay, yes, he's 1 win, 3 losses in his last 4 fights. But at the end of the day, it's Kamaru Usman. He's money in that division as well. I think he's a contender for the title. I think he's got the next title shot.
Yeah, no, he's spoken on his podcast about how he wants to come back. Shavkat doesn't make sense as the next title shot. And him and Belal are basically, already having their war of words, setting up a fight, possibly in December. So he's definitely a contender.
But talk about his last fight too. His last outing against Khamzat Chimaev. Taking it on short notice. That goes 5 rounds. I think Usman probably wins that fight.
People think he won that fight at 3 rounds.
It goes very close. So to see what he's done at someone in a weight above, I think he can come back down to welterweight and be a contender. So Usman a contender for me. Number 3, Shavkat Rakhmonov.
Another contender. We've said it many times. He's the boogeyman, not only of that division, but the whole of the UFC.
Yeah.
18-0.
All finishes.
All finishes. The guy's pretty much unstoppable. I don't know why he hasn't fought this year. I know he had an injury towards the end of last year after his fight against Wonderboy, but people are running scared from him. They don't want to fight him.
Look, it's contender or pretender. I think Shavkat's a contender, but the only thing holding Shavkat back is he's a pretender when it comes to selling a fight.
He can't speak English.
He can't sell a fight like a Kamaru Usman can, like a Colby Covington can, but he's a contender in every other aspect. I want to see him fight for the title, but until, is he putting out his own tweets? I don't know. Belal doesn't seem to think so.
Well, the thing is, they're both, him and Usman are both contenders because if they do fight Belal, I think they both beat him. Mm-hmm. Belal does not beat either of those fighters, so they're both contenders.
Jack Della Maddalena.
It's hard to say this as an Aussie. I like Jack. We've met him in person. His nose is a bit messed up, and I think he's a pretender. I don't think he could actually win the title. Realistically, he lost to Gilbert Burns up until that lucky knockout. Gilbert Burns was dominating him. And Gilbert Burns is someone that's just an echelon below the likes of Belal, the likes of Shavkat.
When you say contender or pretender, we're saying contender for the title. And at this point in time, I don't think JDM could win the title.
Look, he can fight for the title.
I just think Belal, Usman, These guys are just on another level. He can definitely contend, and anything can happen on any given Sunday. You saw what happened in the Gilbert Burns fight. I just don't think he's a contender right now, so it's a pretender for me.
Yeah, because he can maybe, if he does win maybe a fight against Leon Edwards, he can maybe fight for the title, but I think whoever the title holder is will just, have an easy time fighting JDM.
Colby Covington, contender or pretender?
Mate, the guy's going to retire, mate. The guy's not he's the biggest pretender of them all.
I think I like him. He was great. He was great in person to us. I don't think he is as what he puts on television and what he puts out on social media as a person. But right now, Colby Covington is a pretender.
Nothing
to do what you
personal.
did in that Leon Edwards fight, whether you had an injury or not, to talk that much shit and not really back it up, like the showings that you had against Usman were far better. And I don't know if he's there anymore. And he hasn't shown it because he doesn't fight that regularly. You're talking about maybe one fight a year, which is terrible. So he will have one more fight this year, I guarantee it. But right now, he's a pretender.
Nothing personal against Colby. I'm a big fan. I like the stuff. I like the way you have your character. I think you got great mic skills.
Yeah.
Great at selling fights, but you're a pretender when it comes to actual fighting now. That's the way it is.
And number 7, Ian Machado Gary to finish.
No comment.
No comment?
Massive pretender. I'm sorry.
Huge
I
pretender.
Look, I don't want to take a shit on Ian Gary. We do it all the time, but he's a massive pretender.
No,
I mean, his wife's a bigger chance of becoming the actual champion.
I didn't think that he was that much of a pretender until that last fight against MVP. Because he was talking all this, how much he was going to go out there and snipe him, go toe-to-toe with him, be smart about it. And it was just a boring fight. And you could say he's got a high MMA IQ, but at the end of the day, I don't think, like JDM, like I said with JDM, I don't think he could go in there and compete with a Bilal or with a Usman. And you saw what Bilal did he just picked apart Leon Edwards. I think Bilal would pick apart an Ian Gary.
And the thing with Ian Gary, I don't think too many fighters above him in the rankings are entertained by the prospect of actually fighting him. Shavkat doesn't want to really fight him. He wants someone higher. Kairouz Usman doesn't want to sink that low and fight Ian Gary. Bilal, no chance of fighting him. And even Leon Edwards, they've talked about, how they've had that prior history of him kicking him out of the gym. Maybe that fight could happen. But Leon Edwards, when you ask him about it, no, he doesn't want to fight Ian Gary. So Ian Gary's actually going to have to fight people below him, which is always tough to make it to a title fight.
Yeah, no, look, Ian Gary for me, definite pretender in the division right now until he changes that. And he has the power to change that. He's called out people like Shavkat to change that. But right now for me, Ian Gary, pretender.
Now let's go back to Chael Sonnen. Yeah. He came out on his YouTube this week and was talking about Sugar Sean O'Malley. He was headlining the Sphere coming up, but he said Sugar Sean is the biggest star in the UFC, bigger than Conor McGregor.
I call bullshit on that. And I like Chael. Chael's got some unique takes. But right now, would the face of the UFC be struggling to sell out the Sphere? It's already the Sphere. It's already a spectacle, and it's not sold out. In comparison to someone like Canelo Alvarez across the road, who's doing great in ticket sales. The UFC had to lower their prices at the Sphere to get people to come in. That doesn't sound like someone that's the biggest star in the UFC to me. That doesn't sound like a Conor McGregor. If Conor McGregor was at the Sphere, the place would be sold out in 30 minutes. I'm sorry.
You could make the argument that Sugar Sean's the biggest rising star in the UFC, but looking at his pay-per-views against Aljamain and against Chito Vera, the one against Chito Vera, the Latinos turned up for Chito Vera. They weren't turning up for Sugar Sean. Sugar Sean attributing the gate ticket, the massive gate thing that they did for that UFC, it wasn't because of Sugar Sean.
I don't think that Sugar Sean has the worldwide appeal that other fighters do have. And I'm talking about Alex Pereira, a Conor McGregor, who are the genuine faces and the biggest stars in the UFC for me. I think they just have more worldwide appeal. And Sugar Sean, yes, he could be big in America. He could be big in Arizona. But I just don't think he is the biggest star in the UFC. Very entertaining, very consistent with his podcast, knows how to do social media, his own manager. I get it, but I don't think he's the biggest star in the UFC.
And not to take another shot at Sugar Sean, but if Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria were going to be put on the Sphere card, Sugar Sean's getting bumped down to co-main event. The biggest star in the UFC is not going to be a co-main on any card. But that does beg the question. If Sugar Sean isn't the biggest star in the UFC, who is the biggest star in the UFC?
Well, I think it's Alex Pereira right now. I think he's saved every single card, puts his hand up for the UFC, and he can save a card because of his star power. And that's the argument at the end of the day. I think Sugar Sean is appealing to the younger audience, the happy dads, the Nelk Boys type audience, and they're just waiting for that younger audience to start watching combat sports and grow into the product. So that's probably an investment for the UFC. I think the biggest star right now is Alex Pereira, and his resume shows it.
Well, if we're not going to include Conor McGregor as an active fighter, then, you know, it's obviously not going to be Conor. But if you do look at the pay-per-view numbers of UFC 300 and UFC 303, there's no argument. You know, Alex Pereira is the biggest star in the UFC. People, you know, they get excited to watch him fight. When he gets announced for fights, he's the biggest star. Jon Jones as well. I still say Jon Jones, he's active and is a much bigger superstar than Sugar Shawn. Yeah. People want to see Jon Jones when he makes comments on stuff. It holds a lot more weight, and that's because he's the biggest star.
He's the greatest of all time, according to Dana White. So, yeah, I agree with that. Maybe it's a money thing. I mean, some of these kids that follow Sugar Shawn, maybe can't afford the $50, $60 pay-per-views. I mean, and as they grow up and mature, they won't be streaming it online. They'll be buying Sugar Shawn pay-per-views.
That's a big if. And if Chael Sonnen didn't cite that if about these kids, I don't know where he's getting his information from.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, the trash talk position is, our position is, Sugar Shawn is not the face of the UFC right now. It's fighters like Jon Jones, Conor McGregor, Alex Pereira. I think that's fair to say.
Fair enough. I get that.
Now let's go into the Jon Jones-Tom Aspinall beef. This thing has been heating up like crazy the last few weeks.
And they're going at each other on Instagram comments, Twitter. I think they seriously dislike each other now.
I want to give a timeline for it, okay? Tom Aspinall calls Jon Jones out for the fight, after his fight. He says, Jon Jones, I just think I'm better than you.
You're just going back to Manchester.
Back to Manchester. Tom Aspinall, after his fight, calls out Jon Jones, says, I just think I'm better than you. Let's fight. Let me prove it. Jon Jones ignores him. Doesn't give him the time of day. Doesn't look at it, right? Tom Aspinall doubles down, okay? Makes skits on his YouTube looking for Jon Jones. Can't find him anywhere. Looking in the pool, looking online. Then does an interview later and says, I think he was pressed by someone saying, who's the biggest fight dodger in the UFC? That it has to be Jon Jones. Has to be Jon Jones. Jon Jones takes that to heart, I think. Out of everything that Tom Aspinall's ever said, comments on Instagram, comment comes up, you've got my big black dick in your mouth.
Jeez.
And goes on to say that he's really playing the legacy card, Jon Jones, saying that you'll never have the accolades that I have, the titles that I have won, and essentially I'll be able to retire my kids. I'm pretty sure this is Jon Jones confirming that he's going to retire. This is going to be his swan song fight, and he's going to go off into the distance after he fights Stipe. But is this the right move for Tom Aspinall to really get under the skin of Jon Jones and maybe convince him into taking this fight?
Well, I feel like this is the last resort for Tom Aspinall because you've done the cordial call out. You've made the, I'm the interim champion. You got to fight me. I'm the up and coming. If you really want to be the GOAT, Jon Jones hasn't entertained it. He even tried to do the face-off. Jon Jones wasn't even entertaining the face-off. So now Tom Aspinall's like, look, I'm probably not going to get the fight. So the only way I can get it is to insult him personally and make him riled up and want to actually fight me.
He's talking about his positive past drug scandals. You know, Jon Jones testing positive. That's the only thing that he's good at. Not just winning titles, but testing positive for drugs. And again, Jon Jones took the bait. Comments on that again saying, I was ahead of my time, had picograms in my system, now they're illegal. So again, I think Tom Aspinall is doing his job in, getting under the skin and agitating Jon Jones. That could eventually result in having to take this fight because the fan backlash right now, honestly, you'd have to think, is it a disservice that Jon Jones, in my opinion, is the greatest of all time, right? But had Jon Jones just retired after the Cyril Gane fight, no one would be saying, go and fight Tom Aspinall. You're not the greatest of all time. He would have been considered the GOAT for walking in there and what he did to Cyril Gane. But now the fact that he wants to take this Stipe fight and there's an interim champion in Tom Aspinall, now I think it's probably done harm to Jon Jones' career.
Well, what's done harm is that he got injured because if he never got injured, he probably would have fought Stipe and Tom Aspinall would be nowhere near the title picture. Not nowhere near it, but he wouldn't be in that conversation. Jon Jones, I don't think he's giving much attention to it because he's Jon Jones. He does what he wants. He knows how good he is. But I understand the point that now he's considered to be ducking Tom Aspinall, which isn't good on his career. But, given 2 years' time, if he beats Stipe, he's won 2 heavyweight fights, he's a 2-division champion, he's never lost the fight. I don't think people are going to hold it against him that he was ducking Tom Aspinall. It doesn't make sense for him to fight him at 36, 37 years old. He doesn't need to fight someone that's going to be the biggest danger to that, zero in his career.
The only thing for me that makes sense that Jon Jones doesn't want this fight is he's not talking about how badly he would beat Tom Aspinall. He's not saying like he did for DC, I would kill you, when he got caught on that hot mic. You know, I would literally kill you if you came
you
over here.
you haven't heard the hot mic about
Well,
Tom
he's
Aspinall
not
yet.
alluding to a fight between the two of them. He's saying, you know, you will never match up to my legacy, my titles. But he's not coming out and saying, I would beat you and this is how I would do it and you're not on my level. He's not saying that at all. So I genuinely think he's scared of a young bull in the division that is Tom Aspinall, who is the interim champion and would probably be his biggest test at heavyweight.
Of course it would be the best test at heavyweight because he's the best heavyweight at the moment. Stipe in all this, for some reason, has just kept quiet. I saw a video of him dancing, but Stipe has got absolutely nothing to say. He just wants to fight Jon Jones. I don't even know if he thinks he can win because he's done zero promo for the fight. He's done zero. Not that they've announced it, but Stipe is allegedly fighting Jones in November, and he's, you know, MIA. He's completely MIA.
Well, I'm saying to think that Jon Jones came out and told Cyril Gunn that he would destroy him. He hasn't said the same thing about Tom Aspinall. And I think Tom's right. Jon Jones, the GOAT, is ducking Tom Aspinall because he just doesn't want that fight. He wants to go, drive off into the sunset after he fights Stipe and retire with his millions. And he can do that because he is the GOAT. He has the right to do that. But it will be an asterisk on his legacy.
Okay, so this brings me now to my bigger question. Tom Aspinall, who maybe still believes he's going to fight Jon Jones. He's still, you know, holding on to a, you know, little small hope that he might fight Jon Jones. But who is more delusional? Tom Aspinall wanting to fight Jon Jones or Michael Chandler wanting to fight Conor McGregor?
I'm honestly, Tom Aspinall. Michael Chandler McGregor has been rumored for years now. We're talking a year in the making. I think it's bound to happen. Dana's teased it. Conor wants to do it in December. Michael Chandler's gone on to WWE Raw and called him out, right? I think that's more likely to happen. Tom Aspinall waiting on two people that want to retire. They want to be out of the UFC. We're talking late 30s, want to get out of the game, retire their kids, pay their kids college tuition, right? I think Tom Aspinall is a bit more delusional. But it's not delusion. He can have hope and want to have this fight because it's a money match. He knows the fanfare behind it. But right now, he's more delusional in thinking that fight will happen.
The reason I say Michael Chandler is more delusional is because it's been cancelled on him at least a handful of times. He's spoken about fighting Conor McGregor for so long, and it hasn't happened, and it's still not confirmed to happen. Tom Aspinall, I'm not saying he's delusional. I'm saying he's very smart. He's making a very calculated move to increase his stock in the UFC. He's calling out Jon Jones, and it's the ultimate win-win situation for Tom Aspinall. Either he fights him, has a massive money fight, possibly beats Jon Jones, or he doesn't fight him and Jon Jones is ducking Tom Aspinall.
Well, what would be more of an asterisk on Jon Jones' career? All the drug and doping scandals or ducking Tom Aspinall? Because the fans right now are making it very well known that if you don't fight Tom Aspinall, you ducked. And how could you be considered the GOAT if you ducked Tom Aspinall?
Listen, Jon Jones' biggest asterisk is always going to be the drug and criminal record because he's never going to, you know, escape that. Yeah, he's got a no contest because of the drug, you know, and the performance-enhancing asterisks on his career. Tom Aspinall, he could lose a fight later in his career and everyone will forget about, you know, this whole altercation he had with Jon Jones. Jon Jones, while he is considered the GOAT, he's not ducking anybody. He can do whatever he wants, and that's why I believe Dana White when he says he's the pound-for-pound greatest and the greatest fighter of all time. He can do whatever he wants.
Well, back to your question. Chandler can be delusional because at the end of the day, it's up to Conor McGregor. You have absolutely no say. Your delusion is you can't call for this fight.
Yeah.
Tom Aspinall, I don't think he's as delusional. I just think it's not likely to happen. He's doing the right thing and calling him out, and that might be a bit delusional. But he's become the GOAT killer without having to do anything.
Exactly. He's ending Jon Jones' career by not fighting him. That's the scariest part of this whole situation.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go to fight night this week. The headliner, Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady. Now, there's been some money, smart money coming in for Gilbert Burns. The underdog.
A lot of UFC fighters have come out and said that, you know, Gilbert Burns is no slouch. He will be the favorite for me in this fight.
Robert Whittaker, Aussie, come out and said Gilbert Burns is one of the best grapplers in the UFC. And if he were betting on the fight, he would take Gilbert Burns. Now, Gilbert Burns for me has been very unlucky, okay, because his last fight against Jack Della Maddalena could have gone either way. I thought he was dominating the fight until he got caught with that knee and turned the fight. You could see how distraught he was after that fight. And he's put a lot of pressure on himself going into this Sean Brady fight night because if he can't beat Sean Brady, his career is done in that division.
Yeah, and I feel like he knows that as well. So that's why he'll come out with one of his better showings. Not that he had a bad showing against JDM. Look, I haven't seen much of Sean Brady. I think he had a disappointing showing against Bilal Muhammad. But Bilal Muhammad does that to people. You know, he slugs it out for a unanimous decision victory. But Gilbert Burns, one of the most lovely and best people in the UFC.
I love him.
Our interaction with him, he became one of my favorite people in the world, one of the best fighters in the UFC. So I am rooting for Gilbert Burns, and I think he gets it done on the weekend.
Well, Brady's only loss was against Bilal because he couldn't wrestle, couldn't stand up with the pressure. Gilbert Burns is a great wrestler. Right?
Terrific. You saw what he did to Hamzat.
Great grappling skills. Is it going to be a case of him and Sean Brady go toe-to-toe in the middle of the octagon? Or is this a grappling fest and see who gets the better of each other?
I guess you never know because you saw what happened against Hamzat. Hamzat, a great striker, a great wrestler, someone who overwhelms his opponent with the way he kind of shoots for takedowns. But Gilbert Burns is able to, hold that off. And they ended up having a great striking battle. The same could happen in this fight. Sean Brady could try and shoot early and trying to get stuffed, and then it becomes a massive striking battle.
Well, look, from what I've been told by Robert Whittaker, other UFC fighters who are getting behind.
Kairouz Usman.
Yeah, Kairouz Usman, who are getting behind Gilbert Burns. You're talking about a BJJ world champion. My prediction is Gilbert Burns by decision, no finish. It's going to be a decision victory, and he makes his way on a road back to the title.
I hope it does happen. I don't think he's going to get that far on his road back to the title. I think he's getting up there in age. I think he's more likely going to retire soon than get a title fight. But him getting on at least a win streak will be nice for UFC fans.
So keep an eye out. Look out for our predictions on our Instagram and TikTok at Kairouz Bros. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube at Kairouz Bros. We'll be putting our prediction and best bets for fight night this week. And looking forward to the Sphere as well. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. Make sure you also keep an eye out for our top five. We haven't put a top five out this week. We've got a top five coming out next week as well. So but make sure you always subscribe. Let's go to our MMA Hot Take hotline where we ask you callers to call into our 1-800 number and give us your MMA Hot Take of the week. This week we've got one coming in from a caller. Let's see what he has to say.
So, mate, everyone's looking over Stipe and his upcoming bout against Jon Jones, but hot take, I actually think Jon Jones is a fucking bum in the heavyweight division.
Hang on a second. Jon Jones is a bum in heavyweight.
Let him talk.
Have you not heard the glazing from Dana White for the past 3 months?
It's probably a big Tom Aspinall fence. Let it play.
How can you call? I just disagree from the get-go. You can't call Jon Jones a bum.
So what we got to look back to his last fight against Cyril Gane. He won that based off his grappling. Now, my grandmother, who uses a walking cane, has better stand-up, better takedown defense than Cyril Gane.
Okay, he walked through the heavyweight champ in one round.
He was like an interim champ. I don't think he was the actual champ.
I could 100% guarantee that Cyril Gane has better grappling than your grandmother who's in a walker.
And Cyril Gane, I don't know if he knows, is his grandmother about 6'5", 300 pounds? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Cyril Gane is no slouch. And for Jon Jones to do what he did to Cyril Gane and capture the heavyweight champion, not a lot of people could have done.
No.
So, again, I'm going to have to disagree with this hot take so far. What does this have to say?
I think he's going to be able to put the same grappling control on Stipe. And from the striking exchanges that we saw from Jon in heavyweight, he just looked slow and fat. And I don't know, I think a trim, I don't know what the words are, but a more mobile Stipe is going to lay some hands on that chin, and I think we're going to see the chin of Jon Jones broken.
I think he was trying to say that Stipe's going to trim down.
He's going to be slim. A slimmer non-Cyril Gane like.
But I don't know if he saw though. But quickly, I don't know if he saw a slim Stipe Miocic get absolutely destroyed and basically near-death experience for Stipe against Francis Ngannou. Stipe needs to be full to fight at heavyweight.
Look, to the caller's credit, Jon Jones doesn't have Francis Ngannou striking ability, as in power, punching power.
He can if he wants to.
Okay, but don't get me wrong. Jon Jones is a technical fighter. You saw what he did to DC. He finds holes in people's games. I'm sure he could find holes in Stipe, who looks like he needed a walker himself last time we saw him make the walkout at UFC. Look, at the end of the day, I can agree with the caller. People are sleeping on Stipe. You're still talking about someone that is one of the greatest in that division. He's one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. You can't count him out. But I just think Jon Jones is just head and shoulders above. You saw what he's been able to do against Cyril Gane. And just his striking in his UFC career. So I think this caller is very delusional in saying Jon Jones is a bum. I think it's not an easy win for Jon Jones, but it is a win for Jon Jones.
Look, I can understand the anger at Jon Jones for not being active and not even acknowledging a potential fight with Aspinall. But to call him a bum, come on. People have got him as their GOAT, and you're saying he's a bum? You're an idiot.
Yeah, say that to Dana White. I'm sure you're going to get a very different answer.
Oh, do me a favour, say it to Jon Jones' face.
Yeah.
Say it's a bum to his face. I dare you.
Look, I understand. You're back in Stipe. Not a lot of people are going to. And at the end of the day, Jon Jones, greatest of all time, legacy. It's a legacy fight for him. He's just got a lot more to gain from this fight, and I think Jon Jones gets the win. It's simple as that.
Simple as that.
Yeah, but thank you for calling in, and make sure if you're calling the number, the 1-800 number for the MMA Hot Take hotline, let us know. Give us your hot take every single week. We'll be playing a call from one of the viewers. Keep them coming in. We're loving it. But that is all we have for Trash Talk this evening. Thank you for always tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to Kairouz Bros. Till next time, back to you in the studio, Ryan.